Hi, my name is Carlson, and I'm doing a video review of C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe stage adaptation that our theater in Russia class performed at the Molly Brunel Theater last weekend. Now, first thoughts I had going into this were, man, I really hope they don't screw it up. And I know that's kind of a cynical way to approach it, but various sort of epic fantasy tales have been, adapted on stage, mostly in film. In fact, I can only think of film to begin with, but, take Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, for example. Both of those films were good in their own regards, but my problem with them anyways, they missed out on some of the juicy aspects that I really enjoyed from the the fantasy novels. And I haven't actually even seen the Narnia movies yet, which have been out for some time now, for fear that they will kind of take one of my favorite fantasy stories as a child and basically miss the big picture. Now, on stage, what I guess I was really curious about was how are they going to take, such a dynamic setting like Narnia, include the wardrobe, and make it all relatively believable, if you will. And how the theater did this was they had a stage to begin with, which was the wardrobe, which was pretty, flashy in its own regard, with all different items of clothing, the wardrobe, different closets, right? It looked like, pretty impressive in its own regard. But what really did it for me was when the children stepped into the wardrobe and it turned into Narnia. And this transition, they would always play this music in the background, and it would usually be the same music, which I think was a very good directorial decision, because in a lot of these epics, you kind of want to have the same music to signify the bad guy coming, or transition between worlds, or transition to the hero's maturity. I thought this was a wise idea. And what really worked for me was how they used literally two sets, the wardrobe and the house in which they start out at, and this one landscape of Narnia, which was just kind of a winter wonderland, and this rock that would unfold into the faun, Tumnus's house, how they used this one landscape to portray all of Narnia. And they did it effectively. And, others could disagree, because, Narnia is a very dynamic place. It's a huge universe, and yet they only really had this one, kind of snowy backdrop there. But what they did that made it work was have different characters, come in and out constantly to kind of make it seem as if they were moving with the landscape. The wolves will come out, they'll leave, the squirrels will come out, the children will come out. And it all seemed like, they kind of had different agendas going on. They didn't seem to be all looking for each other and just kind of in a farcical manner, missing each other at the last moment. It was pretty convincing. Another thing that really stuck out to me was, how well they used what little they had. The actors were very resourceful. Especially the wolves from kind of the Queen's faction, if you will. They relied very little on the physical environment around them and just focused kind of more on their acrobatics. They had this very Arabian Nights style way of fighting, although the squirrels didn't really kind of possess that same sort of pizzazz. They had their own the little unique character traits too, and mostly their constant chattering, which I kind of found to be annoying by the end of the show, but we won't go into that. And the stage fighting, back to that, was very convincing. The sword work, what they did, which was another pretty smart decision, is realize that they probably only had amateur swords fighters on stage, because this is a children's theater. No one in here, has had more than, I would say, 10, 12 years of actor training, which is a pretty long time. But I don't think anyone on that stage, just based on viewing it, had studied sword fighting exclusively. So when the characters did draw the swords, what really impressed me is how they utilized slow-mo and made it look good, because I know slow motion can look so, kind of tacky in a sense. But with the use of slow-mo, kind of flashing strobe lights and things like that, they made it look like a pretty epic fight scene, which is pretty good, all things considered. And each of the individual characters seemed to be pretty strongly developed. An interesting decision was to omit the fourth character from the novel, the fourth child, Susan. And unfortunately, I missed out on my chance to ask the actors why this happened. But it almost seemed to flow better that way. And looking back on the novel, her character, I don't know, didn't really seem to contribute that much to the plot. So maybe they were just making things easier for everybody else by, kind of cutting out an unnecessary character. But all in all, the performance was pretty impressive, especially for children's theater. I believed it to be the best children's theater that I've ever seen, which I can't say is too much. But this is Will Carlson coming from the bottom of the stairs at Godzilla's hostel, because there's nowhere else to find privacy in Moscow.